Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning. This is Kinetic Chaos Podcast number 76. I'm your host, Will, joined as always by remote with my good friend Wes.
Right here I am.
He is right there. This is our first time taking the old remote control, or not remote control, just remote broadcast for a test spin. So bear with us a little bit while we try to figure everything out here because this is the first time for us. How we doing, Wes?
Fantastic. No complaints. It's one day till Friday. So
it is one day till Friday, right?
Yep, that's the best part of the week. Well, no, that's not the best part of the week. The Friday is the best part of the work week, I guess. So
yeah. To answer your question that you just had there, it looks like what it's doing is the screen is bouncing back and forth between us as we speak.
So interesting.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen with that. I may toy around with that at some point in time, but that being said, I'm going to kill that for now. Go back to our notes. As always, we want to start the show off with something good that's happened to us since we broadcast last week. So what do you got for me, Wes?
Well, I got my daughter had her first T-ball practice of the season, and yeah, it's the old herding cats thing going on there with 11 kids running around and nobody knows what they're supposed to be doing. Then they just practice basic fielding drills, just fielding grounders and hitting off the tee. And but you know, when you obviously got one kid hitting off the tee and the rest of the kids are out in the field and they're
daisies.
Yeah, exactly. They're bored out there. They're just like they got their back face into the plate and they're looking the wrong way. And yeah, so it was a good experience for the first time. So
yeah. Well, no, that's always a lot of fun to get out there with the kids, but when they're that age, the big deal with that is, going back to what you said, herding cats.
Yeah.
Really, being a coach of that is not something that I could have ever done because I love kids to death, my kids mainly. And when you have to get after another person's kid, especially that kid that to be a little polite, maybe isn't used to having somebody speak to them kind of sternly, like get over here, get your act together.
No discipline.
Yeah, exactly. And they're out there, practically taking a bat to little Timmy and Johnny or Julie or whoever. And well, what's wrong with that? I can't clock them over the top of the head. No, you can't. That's frowned upon. Great.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's a lot of fun, but they have now. Where do they play? Where do you guys play your games?
The games are going to be at George Schmidt Field, little T-ball fields there to the left, but we practice at Lower Hathaway Park at the little T-ball field there. So
well, hey, at least you have a nice area to practice at.
Absolutely.
That's actually quite a big bonus. Well, we've for me, we've been enjoying this beautiful weather. So the best thing that's been happening to me is I took the top off the Jeep. And I have been enjoying the ever-living tar out of having the top off, not having to freeze my rear end off, which is a tremendous bonus because during this winter, I still want to drive it because it's such a blast. So I would take the doors off. 45-degree weather, nice day, but 40 degrees and doors off, you're bundled up like the kid in A Christmas Story, driving down the road and people looking at you like you're a goofball. But
yeah, there you go.
Now, what did we get? I think we got to 73 yesterday.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, no, that's more than crazy. I frankly couldn't believe that. But yeah, to be able to drive, I still had to go with the long sleeve shirt / sweatshirt type situation. So that's all right. I'm fine with that. Derek has been enjoying it greatly because if Brandon's with me, Brandon, of course, always rides shotgun as the older brother. Derek can just pull the jump up on the tire and get in the back of the truck.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a tremendous bonus. Well, we've got a good news story lined up here, and this is about a group of firefighters that we didn't do this one last week, did we?
No, I did not.
No. They bought an elderly woman a microwave for her Meals on Wheels. Am I right?
Yeah, this is in Florida, High Springs, Florida.
They don't do bath salts, or do they?
Yeah, exactly. No kidding. she had activated her little life alert alarm, and so they showed up, and I guess basically,
get up.
yeah, basically she just did it because she was lonely, I guess. So they got to chatting with her, and they saw that they asked how she was getting her food, and just asked her like, well, basic welfare questions. And she said that she had Meals on Wheels, and she said that her microwave broke a while back ago, so she just had to basically take her freezer meals out ahead of time and let them thaw on the counter and just kind of eat them cold. She had no way to heat her frozen meals up. So the firefighters jumped in their car and ran down to Lowe's, jumped in their fire truck and ran down to Lowe's and bought her a microwave and came back and installed a new microwave for her.
No kidding.
So that was a pretty sweet deal.
Oh, that's more than sweet. I mean, that when I went in and I read the story, I thought that was pretty darn neat for those guys to go out and do that, because, you know, what's a microwave cost now? You probably get one for, I haven't bought a microwave since ever, but what, 20, 50 bucks probably?
Oh yeah, less than 50. Yeah, they're pretty cheap.
Yeah, we're talking, you know, nothing fancier, but it's enough to, but if that's her only source of you know, heat to bring herself nourishment, I mean, that's anyone would do that, I would think.
Yeah.
And so that's and the Meals on Wheels program in general, I don't know if you know much about that, but at Windermere we were involved with them. I didn't actually go out and do anything with them, but you know, it was such one of the gals, Nancy, in my office, was very, very involved with them. And you know, it's not so much even the food that you deliver with Meals on Wheels, it's the interaction that you have with the seniors. I mean, they look forward to that. A lot of them, that was the highlight of the entire day for them, if not week. So that's pretty tremendous for those firefighters to do that on what is more than likely just you know, like I said, kind of a call for, you know, help, in that she just needed to talk to somebody. So
right.
That's pretty cool. Well, we're going to get into some, just a few stories here. We're going to do a little hybrid show. We're going to bring Freestyle in here at the end, but we want to, you know, there's been a lot of stuff going on. We haven't done an actual KCP episode in a couple of weeks. So with some news coverage, and it seems like every day we've got this constant barrage of new happenings, whether that's in the political arena or unfortunately airplanes, crashing, all kinds of, you know, real estate, doesn't matter what it is, every day we get bombarded. And so Wes and I have actually toyed around with the idea of maybe doing this a little more often, jumping on for possibly shorter shows, you know, maybe 15 to 30 minutes type stuff for, you know, things that we want to comment on or give our take on, you know, the day that it happens, because it's, you know, by the time we cover stuff, if it's a week old, it's, you know, that might as well be a year outside of the news cycle, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So sorry, I had to get a drink of water. This whole webcam thing's kind of tripping me out, because this turkey neck deal here is, you know, from having, I used to have like jowls of a I don't know, a large hog or something like that. So I've got this extra skin going on here, and it's kind of freaking me out. So hopefully it doesn't freak everyone else out. Here, I'll just, does it work if I talk?
There you go.
No, it doesn't work as well. So anyway, yeah, we want to talk about the Boeing situation, and that is a horrible deal that seems to be getting worse and worse by the day. Am I right?
That's right. So the backstory on this is the new iteration of the Boeing 737, which is the MAX 8 and MAX 9 series, their long-range models, had a crash back in Indonesia back in October, and most recently, just here a few weeks ago, in Ethiopia. Both of these, the one last October, the plane was, I think, just a couple weeks old, and the one that happened just now, or just recently in Ethiopia, I think the plane was like 4 months old. So they both were basically brand new aircraft. And what it's, you know, there's a lot of similarities that have been drawn after they're analyzing the black boxes. And it seems to be that there's this anti-stall software that seems to be kind of malfunctioning and basically taking over the plane and not letting the pilots override that. So long story short, the aircraft have been grounded pretty much worldwide now, including here in the US. And it's getting interesting now is that the Department of Transportation is going to open an investigation into the FAA to see why it was that they didn't catch this software glitch while they were certifying the plane. And then the other side of the issue is looking at Boeing itself and the rules and regulations surrounding certification of aircraft, is that Boeing was allowed to do a lot of self-certification. So they didn't have to go to an independent third party to have them check all the boxes on a new aircraft. They were allowed to do their own testing and self-reporting and sign themselves off on a lot of stuff. And that's a little sketchy to me.
That's more than a little sketchy, and I've actually been following this quite closely. A number of things that I've kind of checked out and I've read about is, here's one huge issue, is that I believe somebody, possibly the head of the FAA or somebody in a very big capacity, was a Boeing executive in the past.
Okay.
And so going back to what you were talking about, the checks and balances were not followed very well. Another really interesting thing that I found was that the pilot of the crash in Ethiopia just a couple of weeks ago was actually what they call a deadhead on a flight the day before that this happened on.
Right. He was sitting in the jump seat in the cockpit, and he was able to,
he was actually able to stop it because he knew how to shut down the motor that controlled the nose. Because what it is, for those that aren't aware of what happens, is the computer somehow malfunctions and forces the jet to, or thinks the jet is climbing too high, so it forces it down. And this motor that is responsible for making the nose dive, they can manually override it by shutting the power off. Well, evidently they weren't able, or they didn't do that on the crash, obviously, that happened in Ethiopia, but the day before that he was able to do it. The other crazy thing is that now we're finding out that Boeing actually had the patch to the software for this that they were trying to sell to the different airlines. Now there is a criminal investigation underway by the DOJ, and there's going to be some people, in my opinion, that are going to go down for this, because if you're trying to sell software, and it evidently was at a very handsome price.
Yeah.
If you're trying to sell this and it's cost people millions of, or not millions, it's cost people their lives. If that's the case, the Boeing could go under by the lawsuits because of them being at fault for this. If they can prove that link, the class action suits could be worth billions of dollars, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I heard that on the news, reading stories about that yesterday, that they were offering a patch, and like you said, they were selling that patch as like an add-on feature. And particularly with the Lion Air crash, I'm not sure about Ethiopia Airlines, the one that just happened, but Lion Air, the one that happened last October, they were a discount, like low budget airline, so they didn't have the money to pay the extra, who knows how much it was, for this added patch, the software patch.
Actually, I think I was wrong in the way I stated that. It was the Lion Air pilot back in October that had ridden shotgun, I believe. And then it was the Ethiopia. It wasn't that one. So it was the Lion Air pilot, I believe, is the situation. I had that backwards.
Okay, but yeah, it's bad news if Boeing knew that there was a flaw in the system, and that ultimately it could and did cost people their lives. If there was a known flaw in the system and they tried to make a buck on it by saying, "Oh, here's a quick software patch you can install to override to take care of this flaw, but you're going to have to pay for it."
Yeah, if that was my family, that I lost my brother, sister, I don't care who it is, and they did that on purpose because of money, holy moly! I mean, I would go after them. And there's probably a line of attorneys standing outside the door waiting to take this case.
Yeah.
I mean, and how can you in good conscience do something like that if you know that it's going to cost, after the first crash, after the Lion Air crash, after that first one, you knew what the cause of it was, and yet you still allowed these planes to fly without the necessary patch to the software.
Right.
And here's a conspiracy theory. I'm not big on conspiracy theories, but this one I could actually buy into. They held off on parking every one of those jets to give the big boys a shot at shorting Boeing, because Boeing has been a huge drag on the Dow this week and last week. And they believe that the groundings, they held off on that by a day so that the short positions could get in and make a whole truckload of cash.
Interesting.
Conspiracy theory, I know that, but it's one that is not too far from reality,
right,
in the way people handle these things. Because I believe that, didn't the crash happen on a Saturday or Sunday?
Yeah, I can't remember what day of the week it was.
I believe that's what it was. So they gave him an opportunity to short it. And every day, when I'm on the treadmill in the morning, I always check on CNBC because I want to see what rates are doing. And I'm again all this week every morning, because I usually watch it before the bell and then I watch it afterwards. And every time there is a highlight on the screen regarding Boeing being a huge drag on the market, and the market has been, although today I think it bounced back, at least in early morning trading when I was watching. So anyway, all in all, it's a terrible deal.
Yeah. And interesting little side note is that I discovered that my wife and I are going to Vegas in July, and our return flight coming back home was scheduled to be on a 737 MAX 8, the ones that are grounded now. And so I actually stumbled across it and saw that they had taken our flight off of the website. Our return flight home has been basically locked out. You can't buy tickets on it. So I thought that was kind of weird. So I went poking around and found out that it is, since they've grounded these 737 MAX 8s and 9s, that they've obviously also stopped selling tickets on those particular planes where they know what routes they're going to be on. And that happens to be our return flight coming home. So I would imagine, since we're still 4 months off from that flight, that they will have the software patch and fixes in place within 4 months. But it is kind of interesting that it's kind of this whole scenario, this whole big headline news is technically touching home a little bit for us, because we're going to be on one of those planes theoretically, unless they pull them off the routes. So
absolutely. Now, if you don't mind me asking, which airline are you on?
Southwest.
And see, that's what I was thinking, is Southwest has one plane in their entire fleet. It's the 737.
Yeah. And they've got of this new iteration of the MAX 8, I think they have 34 of those. Those are the newest ones, so they're starting to gradually take delivery on those ones. But yeah, they exclusively fly a 737 airframe.
Yeah, it's going to be insane how this all plays out. I mean, we're just scratching the surface now, and I hope that it's not true. I hope that they weren't. I mean, they weren't. I don't know how much the patch was. I didn't read. I didn't see how much the patch cost, but I mean, they're valuing lives.
Right. And I think now, although it's going to be way too late to save face if it turns out that they were trying to extort airlines for this patch. But I had read yesterday, I believe, that they are anticipating having the software patch rolled out around the world for all aircraft, all these aircraft. I think by the end of this month was their target, to have everything patched and try to get them back up in the air by the end of the month. But still, like you're saying, if now they're going to offer this patch free, when purportedly they may have been trying to sell this patch for a price earlier on, that's not a good look either. So there's a lot to be discovered still.
Yeah, and I would be going way long on Airbus right now.
There you go.
Because you can't, in good conscience, think that Boeing is going to pull out of this slump that they're going to be in this for quite some time.
Yeah,
I think that their good name is being dragged through the mud, and there's so many other things that are going to come into play on this that it's just sad all around. But yeah, I would go way long on Airbus.
And like you're saying, it's kind of the fox guarding the hen house. We've talked about this before with the chairman of the Fed, being in cahoots with the big boys on Wall Street. And here again, if the guys, some of the high-ranking officials in the FAA were former execs for these airline manufacturers, and they've been allowing Boeing, let's say, to sign off on airworthiness certification, there's a lot of conflict of interest going on there.
Oh, huge. But that's the problem with all of these, government services. And we can, not government services, government agencies, we can go off on this forever. But if we get into the SEC, there is no bigger fox guarding the hen house than that.
Yeah.
There are so many
Yeah, I
different
said the Fed, but
rackets.
you're right. The SEC is what I meant to say. Yeah.
Yeah, but the Fed and I mean all of them though at
Yeah.
some point or another worked on the street,
Yep.
and they were, they bounce in and out because they get killer benefits working for the feds, but then they want to actually make some legit money, so they step outside and go back to the private sector for a few years, and it's back and forth, and they're all friends, and so
Right.
it's like, oh, you need this sweetheart deal or that sweetheart deal, oh, we'll make it all happen. And it sounds like in other federal agencies the same thing is happening,
Right.
and all the grift and all that kind of stuff, it's sickening to see.
Yep.
And speaking of, we want to touch on the real estate stuff real quick since
Sure.
we're on that
Yeah.
ship. We've been the interest rates are, not ironically, but funny enough, have actually they've been coming down. We just wanted to touch on real estate in general real quick, as we get into the summer season and things like that. We're seeing the markets definitely heat up, but the rates have come down. And they were up in the I tracked the 10-year T-note, which is what the basis for most mortgages is, and that has dropped probably 10 to 15 basis points in the last week or so. If you look at the trends on that, it's pretty darn crazy. So I mean, I think you can get easily a sub 5% loan right now on a 30-year fixed,
Yeah.
good credit, all the perfect situations. But the market in general, we've been talking a lot in my sorry, while I wipe my eyes here, in my office about the thought that the recession, if it's going to come, would actually start this year rather than next. And actually, there was a Fed decision today on whether they were going to raise or lower rates. And this afternoon, I've been busy actually with the new listing, but so I didn't see what the decision was. But the market is coming on stronger than I frankly anticipated in the local area here in Clark County.
Right.
And I know you've been pretty nose deep in this lately as well.
Indeed. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're starting to see these new listings come on and more activity, open houses, all of those, which is natural for this time of year. But we all through the winter was this like constant, just quiet drumbeat in the back of all of our conversations that hinged on whether we were going to see another strong selling season or if it was going to slow down in relation to years past, particularly 2016, 2017. I think 2018 chilled just a hair compared to 16 and 17, but I mean, we'll see the numbers. It takes a couple months for them to come out, but I think you're going to see that it's going to be stronger than what it was last, or what we were thinking about over
Right.
the summer, or I mean over the winter. So that's kind of just a minor real estate update. That it's just wanted to touch on it as we get into the season here, and you're seeing a lot of people kind of percolate out of the woodwork that I know in my kind of sphere of influence had not anticipated, but the phones, ringing, and people are hot to trot. I think that as we look at this, as I look at this, fear generates a lot of business for us in real estate, because if people are hearing that constant drumbeat in the news cycle that a recession may be coming, interest rates are going up, that's the big one. It
Right.
will force people to act. And so, they want to try to beat their interest rates going up. And, that's one element of market cooling off is, rates going up. And it stops a lot of people, because at one point can have a pretty severe impact on what your monthly payment is.
Yeah. Definitely.
I know that, it's something that people take into account, and rising taxes in our area here has had a huge impact.
Yeah.
You tack on $200 a month extra to somebody's mortgage because the property taxes went up due to the McCleary decision. That impacts probably, tens of thousands of dollars of your purchase power, depending on what your interest rate is.
Exactly right.
We won't belabor that point any longer. what was the other one we wanted to talk? I want to talk about good old Mueller.
Oh yeah.
There's been a lot of rumblings lately, and we'll just talk about this one because we don't have notes for it. But it's really heated up in the last couple of days. What are you thinking about that? That his report is actually going to be due,
Yeah, I don't know what
he's going
to.
to deliver it.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of it because we first heard these rumblings. What was it, like maybe a month and a half ago, that the report was going to drop any day, and it never did. And so now that talk is heating back up again. So it's like it's one of those things that I'm just gonna hold off until it comes out, because who knows how much longer they're going to delay this thing. But I don't know. I still don't anticipate. Well, two things. First thing, I don't anticipate a smoking gun of any sort that's going to implicate Trump per se in anything. But the other thing that's interesting too is you got the Democrat leadership in the House, at least with Nancy Pelosi, coming out publicly and stating that she has no interest in trying to impeach Trump, trying to proceed with impeachment hearings. And of course, she's taken a lot of flack from the far left progressive caucus and members of the House for that. But it's for having the Speaker of the House come out and publicly state that she has no interest in going after impeachment.
I think I think she's playing him.
It could be a calculation. So yeah.
And this is why it's in her rhetoric, the way she framed her statement, basically saying he's not worth impeachment.
Right.
When you're dealing with the classic narcissist and you tell them that they're not worth
yeah, there you go.
Even if it means impeachment, I mean, he's the best at everything. He has proven that over and over again. And so for him to hear he's not good enough, it's like, no, damn it, I'm impeachable.
Yeah, exactly.
It is a technique. And so in terms of smoking guns, I think you could be right. But if all things created equal in terms of investigations, I think the SDNY investigation is, because it's so much more broad than Mueller's investigation, because Mueller's investigation, although it has spread into other areas of government, the main goal of that was to find Russian collusion. And so I think that even if they did find something, I think that there's enough plausible deniability that it will make it very tough to make a connection to the top. I think that he set it up for his underlings to fall, which they are. I mean, Cohen's gone down, and Stone, and who's another crazy person, Manafort, and all of them. And so, but SDNY is getting into the personal stuff on the business dealings and all of those types of things, and they don't have a scope that they have to stay within. I mean, from what I'm reading, I mean, they're bringing out all the guns, and so the problem isn't, and I hate to give him any credit. Trump any credit for saying this, that it's a witch hunt. I think that there is something to the notion that they've invented a crime that they're searching for, or they've come up with a solution to a problem they haven't found yet.
It's definitely, the situation's definitely devolved, and they've gone off onto 800 different tangents that it was never designed to go off on in the first place. So they've definitely lost their way, and they're out trying to find something. At this point, it's drug on this long, and nothing is, other than a few of the guys going down, like you said. No smoking gun has come out as of this point, and I don't foresee one. It's going to be interesting. It's, because I love politics in general. It's 2020 shaping up to be interesting, because you have now, which you usually have with the party that's out of power in the executive branch, their candidates lining up for the primary. You remember back in 2016 for the Republicans, they had 16 or 18 people they started out with at the very beginning of primary season. And now the Democrats are fielding quite a wide swath of potential nominees that have declared themselves. It seems like pretty much every sitting senator's thrown their hat in the ring now all of a sudden. But
it's becoming a clown show to some degree.
Yeah, it is.
Honestly, because every day, I mean, it doesn't matter if it was Inslee or if it's Klobuchar, or however you say
Klobuchar, Amy Klobuchar,
and then you've got crazy Elizabeth Warren, and I didn't go after her, but I had a little bit of a retort to her I did reply to her tweet about the reparations bill and having a discussion about that. And I
Yeah.
kind of lit her up because I said, if there's anything that will enhance or give more power to a victim mentality, it's this.
Yeah.
And I said, opening Pandora's box by trying to pin just one thing. We've all had in our past generations, there's been every type of person has been persecuted at some point in time. At what point do we stop all of this, revisionist history and understand that we made a mistake and we learn from that mistake and we move on from it? And I don't know. And the third thing that I made to her was that you're teaching people that money solves problems.
Right.
Money does not solve problems, especially when it's not earned.
Exactly right.
So.
The thing that I am most intrigued by as we start running closer to 2020 election season is Howard Schultz, and is he going to officially jump in as an independent? Because he would be a game changer for the entire presidential run. I mean, even more so than Ross Perot was as an independent back in, what was that, 92 or something like that. Mm-hmm. Is he can siphon, he would siphon more Democrat votes than Republican votes, but he would siphon votes off of both sides, and particularly the Democrat vote, which is why there are so many Democrats that are lashing out against him. And we talked about that on a previous podcast. I think about they've already done like fact-finding missions trying to dig up dirt on him to try to torpedo him before he even gets a chance. So he very much makes them nervous. And I think if he does jump in full bore as an independent, I think that, depending on who the Democrat nominee is, but for the most part, I think regardless of who it is, I think if he officially enters the race, I think that would hand Trump the victory, because I think he will siphon off too many Democrat votes that the Democrat candidate would not have enough to take out Trump. But what would be interesting too is to see. You think back to last election, 2016, when you had all the blue dog Union Democrats through the Midwest who were a moderate Democrat, and when they could not stand Hillary, they jumped ship and voted Trump. However, if Howard Schultz enters the realm, he is more of a moderate Democrat. He'd be right up their alley. So a lot of those moderate Democrats that voted for Trump because they couldn't stand Hillary, they would abandon Trump and go to somebody like Schultz. So Trump would lose a lot of those Union votes that he gained. And then also a lot of people on the left, depending on how far left the Democrat nominee is, how radical they are, a lot of the moderate Democrats obviously don't want to go that far left. So they would embrace Schultz as well. So Schultz has the potential to really garner a lot of votes. It's going to be a very interesting thing to watch.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think the other thing to keep in mind is that Trump is methodically alienating different portions of his base damn near every day. Most recently, John McCain.
Yeah.
And his dealings with that whole situation, which is something that I have no idea why he would dig that up. And,
yeah.
Sorry, that's a poor choice of words. Yeah. But why he would even engage in that discussion when it's not needed whatsoever. And, talking about giving him a funeral and things like that, he didn't have anything to do with it. I mean, the National Cemetery came out today and said, there is no requirement of the president to have somebody laid to rest there. And so, he continues to I don't know, I can only describe it as, there was a giant block of wood, not to call, Trumpers, blockheads, and it's on a lathe turning, and he's got the chisel, and he's just sitting there just whittling away at it. And I for the life of me, I mean, he goes after the military with the poor decision making in Mattis, and then he doubles down on McCain, and we know what women feel about him. And so I think all of these things at some point in time, I mean, are going to cause an avalanche, don't you?
Yeah, yeah. It's gonna. He certainly doesn't do himself any favor, and we've known that since day one that he's good at alienating people.
Well, and the inability of the or not inability, but the fact that the more senators and congressmen and women did not come out in support of McCain publicly today. Crenshaw went after him.
Yeah,
Kind of. He was had a strongly worded statement, but my goodness, I read a bunch of the comments underneath it. These people are bananas.
yeah.
The way they were going after him, he had a very well crafted message and very short, to the point, being respectful, all of those things. And I'm not kidding. It's amazing, these things that come out for this kind of stuff. But I and Crenshaw's been a staunch, I would say staunch, but he's been a supporter of Trump. And why do that? I just don't get it. But the problem is with the Republicans, who's going to step up and try to take him on and try to take a sitting president off?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's got the stomach for that. It's a very rare thing to try to have a primary challenge for an incumbent president. So I don't see that happening. Just one side note for our viewers, if in case you're a political junkie like me, a plug for an upcoming thing that I just read about. I'm very intrigued because, like I said, the whole Schultz thing intrigues me. Just the fact that he is a moderate in the day and age of radicals on both sides. He is, for my personal taste on a lot of his issues, he's too far to the left for me, but he's still an intriguing person. He's got some good ideas, and he's kind of like Trump. That is to say, he's a businessman. He's a political outsider. So that's kind of a refreshing thing too, even though a lot of his viewpoints are a little too liberal for me. But what I was going to say is, I believe it's the first week. I'll have to double check so we can post this up. I think it's the first week of April. Fox News is going to have a town hall with Schultz, a live audience, and put Schultz up on the stage and have him field questions. So they're basically giving Schultz an open platform on Fox News to do a solo town hall. So that'll be interesting to see what kind of stuff he talks about in terms of his positions and his goals. And to me, if he's going to go through with the town hall, that almost tells me that he is going to enter the race, because why would you go through all that if you're not going to, announce your candidacy? So this may be leading up to a formal announcement of him running as an independent. But it's going to, like I said, there's a lot of positions of his that I don't necessarily agree with, but I would definitely watch this just because I'd be interested to see what he says about some of the economic side of things, see what his view, because I know he's definitely not a socialist like Bernie and Elizabeth Warren. He's very much a capitalist. So he has definitely swung more towards the conservative side on the economic side of things. So it's going to be interesting to hear him talk about that. Looking forward to that.
I don't know enough about what his takes are, because every time he talks about something, it's chopped up so much by the media that you got to sit down and actually listen to the man speak and get context. That's the thing I hate about sound bites. And talking about Ross Perot earlier, that was his problem with sound bites. You're not providing context when you're listening to 12 words out of a 45-minute speech. I wanted to also get your take on this whole electoral college debate that's sprouted in the last few days. I have a huge issue with it, but these far left Dems are acting as if a simple majority type vote. I mean, in fact, Eric Holder came out with a tweet about it today, and I mean, the founding fathers, they looked for the fact, or they knew the fact that no one could be trusted, and that's why there are so many things built into the Constitution that protects us from ourselves. This electoral college is something that was built into the system for one of those exact points. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, because it's getting rid of the electoral college is absolute garbage to me. That's what the country is founded on. The country is a constitutional republic made up of 50 different states, and each of those states through the Electoral College gets to have an equal weight in voice, because obviously if you go with the simple popular vote, that's just mob rule. You need 51%. The mob will overtake everybody else. And we know by looking at the demographics in the United States, you have large concentrations of people in California and New York. So those two states, and Florida and maybe Illinois. So you're talking about 4 states could dictate policy for the entire 50-state union. And that is what the Electoral College is designed to prevent, is having a mob rule of a small concentrated power in far-flung places write policy for the entire country. So getting rid of the Electoral College would be a monumental mistake.
Absolutely. I came across a really good thread explaining the Electoral College and basically what you just said in a little bit broader terms. But so if you go to my Twitter handle at One Hand Man, I know that's hard to believe. At One Hand Man, I tweeted it, I think it was Tuesday night. Nice long thread, but by a scholar that is involved in studying the Electoral College. And so I was taken aback when there was actually some. And now we have to take Twitter with the world's biggest grain of salt, because it is completely jam packed with Looney Tunes folks and people that are not representative of real life, because
Right.
The vast majority of Americans and probably people around the world have absolutely no idea how to even operate Twitter, let alone the fact that it's a gigantic platform to disseminate information. And now we're talking about all the shadow banning and talk about conspiracy theories. Do you give any credence to that kind of stuff?
The shadow ban stuff?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm fully on board with that happening. I've seen documented instances of that. But then you go back to the whole, because I think I read today something about them wanting to introduce legislation to prevent that kind of stuff. And that's a slippery slope to me, because these are private companies. If you don't like it, don't use it, kind of thing. So, or if you feel that you're being marginalized as a certain group, that's all the more incentive to go open your own company, a competing company, and all the like-minded individuals who think they are being targeted can go utilize that company's services instead. So that's the free market has a way of correcting that kind of issue if somebody will go after it, in terms of take the initiative and go after it and start a rival company that speaks to those that feel they are being treated badly. But to write legislation to try to force a private company to do something is no good, no matter how you slice it. So
no, it's and Nunes took a gigantic dump on himself yesterday by filing a lawsuit. Devin Nunes, the rep, for 2 Twitter accounts. One of them, both of them are parody accounts. One of them being his mom, and the other one being his cow. Which, I mean, if there's not a bigger, might as well just get a dumpster full of gasoline and throw dynamite inside of it. Because, first of all, he took a relatively obscure account in the Devin Nunes, or the Devin's cow account, which now has more
blew it up,
than Nunes himself. And you spoke to the exact point that people are forgetting. This is a private corporation. And if you don't want to use it, you don't like it, no one's holding a gun to your head. Oh, but I'm government. Doesn't matter. You don't have to use it. 15 years ago, what did you do?
Right.
You didn't use Twitter because it wasn't here. And so this going, and Trump was talking about it as well, though. This whole idea that they're going to somehow control these companies, whether it's hate speech, whether it's LBGQT, any of that, it doesn't matter what it is, or it's me talking about sports or you talking about politics.
Right.
It's protected, and people forget that kind of stuff just because they're offended by it. And there is some really, really bad stuff on there. Don't get me wrong. It's still protected, and we've got to fundamentally remember that. Because even though it's so easy to get off course because we are offended and we think that it's horrible that Nazis are on there, that are promoting their ways and all of those types of things, and kids can see it, all of that stuff. The responsibility lies on us not to let, if it's our kids, not to let them be exposed to that. And if we don't like it, just avoid it.
Yeah.
If there's somebody clubbing you over the head with a bat, you walk away from them. You don't keep standing there. And so you're stupid if you have to go to your safe space because what somebody they told you to learn to code on Twitter, which is the biggest joke on earth. Did you see that?
Yeah.
That whole learn to code thing. I could not believe that. People are so butthurt that now you get banned on Twitter for telling a journalist to learn to code, which is frankly probably be a pretty good idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe learn how to write code for AI that will then replace you as a journalist.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So we've been on the heavy stuff here.
Yeah. So before we move on to the freestyle, there's one transition fun fact going into the freestyle, talking about, because we talked about Howard Schultz, and this relates to Starbucks. So Schultz is the former CEO of Starbucks. I read an article today that Starbucks is going nuts in China in terms of expansion.
Yeah.
And their current rate of expansion is this is nuts. They're opening a new store in the country of China. Obviously, China's huge. They're opening a new store in China every 16 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they sure do hate capitalism.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
My gosh, talk about draconian laws. But
yep.
I mean, they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, and we'll see how that. But they're, talk about methodical, talk about precision. I mean, they know what they're doing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And whether it's coming after us, our industrial secrets, or the fact that we, our government employees aren't allowed to own any Huawei cell phones because they're constantly spying on us.
Right.
But then today it comes out that Kushner's using WhatsApp to discuss things with MBS. I mean, my goodness. Oh, I took screenshots of it for posterity. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to fly in the National Archives. Here's Jared Kushner's screenshot of him and Mohammed bin Salman discussing, whatever it is that they're discussing. You can't fix stupid.
Yeah.
You just can't, Wes.
That's
amazing.
True. That's for sure.
Well, we're talking about the Far East. Get on some sports a little bit lighter here. The Major League Baseball season kicked off yesterday with the Oakland Athletics and Seattle Mariners over in Tokyo Dome, playing a short 2-game set. We covered this, last week in the cocktail hour, but I want to get your take on Ichiro and the impact that he had on baseball. The fact that I remember his first game makes me feel incredibly old.
Oh,
but
yeah.
The way I mean, I think he kind of, to some degree, revolutionized the sport.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of a kind in terms of his longevity in the sport. He played forever in Japan before he even came over here, and then he played forever here.
I think he's actually like 65 years old.
Yeah, probably so. But given his star power and all he did, he hit back in his heyday with the Mariners, he was hitting like 350 every year, and that's just ridiculous. And he did it year after year after year. But what really has always impressed me about him is the way he carried himself. There was no bat flips out of him. There was no, exuberant celebrations. He was 100% in business all the time. And for a while, when he was arguably one of the best players in baseball, for one of the best players in baseball to carry himself like that and not make it about himself, that's what I appreciate is in somebody like that.
Yeah, and the thing that I always go back to with him that I always find so amazing is that he was the Rookie of the Year and the MVP of the league.
Yeah.
The same year. I mean, that is incredible. Now, like you said, he played for 25, 30 years over in Japan before he came over here in 2001. But the fact that he was he was the batting champion twice, 10-time All-Star. I mean, his career was amazing. But the doors, and the reason I said he revolutionized the sport was the doors he opened for the Hideki Matsuis, for the the whirlwind guy. What the hell was his name? Now, was he before Ichiro?
You think it hit Nomo of the Dodgers
Yeah,
was
Nomo. Yeah,
before he was before
yeah.
Ichiro. Yeah.
But you still have, I mean, a tremendous amount of ball players coming over from
Yep.
Japan, where they do arguably play a little different style of baseball. I mean, I think the Americanized version of it is exactly what you'd think of, what the outside thinks of America anyway, which is home runs or strikeouts.
Right.
I mean, it's go big or go home. Whereas if you watch baseball in Japan, I mean, they're playing a much more technically sound game, much more of a National League game,
Right.
because they're so fundamentally sound. It's not about the long ball, although the Matsuis and guys like him were
Yep.
tremendous long ball hitters.
Yeah. That's
So
right.
it's I think it's pretty cool that he went out. I'm not a big fan of going over to Japan like we talked about last week. I think that kind of I was 50-50, and seeing it on there this morning. You got games on at what, 4 or 5 in the morning or
I think it was
whatever
like
it was.
2:30 a.m. start time for us Pacific. It was like
Yeah,
2:30 in the mornings when it started. Yeah.
yeah, because I watched the save this morning when the Mariners' new closer came in, and I watched the fifth run come in. So yeah, it was right at the game, and that was at probably 6:30,
Yeah, because it went 12
So
innings this morning. So yeah, it had a little
yeah,
OT there.
yeah, they were out in droves.
Oh yeah, and for the rest of baseball, everybody else starts 1 week from today. So we're on the
Yeah.
1 week countdown for opening day. So
Well, and that's what I was going to follow up with, was the fact that it irritates the daylights out of me that they have to go back and play more spring training games. It's like, just give the guys a chance to get over their, whatever stomach bug they're all obviously going to be coming home with, and then start the season. But to go back to spring training at the
yeah,
Grapefruit League, I mean the Cactus League
Cactus League for them. Yeah,
yeah, it's ridiculous.
yeah,
I mean, how do you get hyped up for that? You're out there, you got games that actually count. You got, you're playing in front of what, 350 million people in Japan on TV, and I have no idea. I just totally made that up. But all of these people, and then you're back there in Scottsdale. There's 15 people, and they're all shit faced because they've been drinking beer all day in the sun.
yeah,
So it's kind of anticlimactic to me.
yeah, exactly.
You did you do a March Madness pool?
I did not. No, I haven't done one of those in a long time, because ever since I got into fantasy baseball, once spring hits, it's 100% baseball for me. So I'll watch a little March Madness, but I don't dedicate that much time, like in terms of filling out a bracket. One side note before, if we're gonna segue into basketball, before we leave the baseball subject, is
I'm all for baseball. We don't
okay.
have much time left, but
Yeah, so I was going to say good news for my Cardinals today. They announced or it's not technically announced, but it's almost a done deal, a 5-year extension with Paul Goldschmidt, who they just traded for this offseason. They're going to, so that's awesome. It speaks to the Cardinal culture and how much the players love playing for St. Louis. Here's a guy that got traded this offseason. He hasn't even played a legit game for the Cardinals yet. All he's done is spring training, and he's already inking a 5-year extension after having not even yet playing an official game for them. And you see this going back through time with the old former Cardinals that come back to spring training to be instructors. Even players that have played for other teams throughout their career, they come back to the Cardinals, like Jim Edmonds, who's now does broadcasting for them as well, but he does minor league instructional work. And there's just tons and tons of former players that all come back to do instructional work during spring training with the Cardinals. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is. And kind of to stay on the topic of extensions, what do you think about old Trotsky?
That's pretty nuts. I mean, I would, if we're going to talk apples to apples between Trout and Harper, I would definitely I'd put my money on Trout over Harper. He's much more of a well-rounded player than Harper is. So
significantly.
Yeah.
Better.
So I mean, if you're going to compare the value of those contracts and how that may play out over time, I think the Angels are going to get a lot better return on their investment than the Phillies are.
I think they're going to get a better ball player on the field. I think they're going to get a better ball player off the field, although Trout hasn't made a big many inroads into the getting sponsorships and stuff like that. But he's in the place to do it, and I think you're going to find that as his career progresses, he's going to find more of a natural fit in things that are up his alley. I know Harper is slicker and he's got the beard and the look and that kind of stuff. And they're both incredibly young, but Harper hit what 247 or
Yeah,
249 last
yeah,
year, and
he's a
Trout
good
hit 307.
he's a good 60 points lower than Trout is. So yeah, that's right. It's
Yeah, absolutely. But and I mean, I don't know. There was always that talk that Trout may try to jump over to Philly because that's where he's from. But I think
right.
in the end, I think he made a really good decision. Though the
Yeah.
funny thing is that he may have gotten the years, but did you know that his contract is only worth, I guess, about $1 million a year more than Zach Greinke's? That's bananas to
Yeah,
me.
no, I
I
didn't.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, he's got the years and he's got the financial security and all that, but I don't know. That is still, I mean, like we talked about last week, it is a long time to sign anyone up for.
It is. It is.
And to some degree, as a ball player, I would almost want to like sign a 5-year deal with a player option, like they do in the NBA. I mean, the NBA is controlled by the players,
Yeah.
but do that so I can see where my team is going. I want an opportunity to have some control. I guess they could throw a fit and try to force a trade.
Well, but there's a
down
lot
the
of
front.
contracts now. I mean, Harper's has. I can't remember if Harper has one too, but a lot of the big contract extensions we've seen over the last couple of years have opt-out clauses built in. So if you're signing like an 8-year deal, you're going to have an opt-out clause after year 3 and year 5. So you could choose to bail a couple of different points along the way for that very reason. If you aren't happy with with the direction the team is headed, and you want to jump ship and try your luck somewhere else, they are having those clauses built into some of those player contracts. Although I did read this morning that Goldschmidt's contract that he is going to sign here shortly with the Cardinals, the 5-year extension, there is no opt out on that one. It is a full no trade clause that he worked into that, but there's no opt out.
And I think that's a fair trade off, though, with the no trade clause and no opt out. I mean, both sides want to win on this,
right?
And I think that I wouldn't be opposed to having a 5-year limit on contracts. Get rid of this crap. I mean, the only people that are really honestly winning when you have these deals is Scott Boras and the agents.
Yeah.
I mean, really, they're the ones that are guaranteeing their financial future, and that's how they can build their company. I mean, whether they have investors or we don't talk about the fact that all of these long-term deals are furthering the financial solvability of these agents. I mean, if you can put on your books that you've got, if it's a $30 million deal, you're making $3 million, $2 million bucks a year off that for the next 13 years. You're doing pretty dang good.
Yeah.
It's something that we see all the ball players and what they make and all that, but by the time you chop it up between their overhead and their taxes, I mean, out of 10 million bucks, they're probably getting 3.5 or 4 million if they're lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. Depending on the state you're in. I heard something brought up the other day that was really, really odd, or not odd, but I thought was an interesting thing was that, we have to deal with these ball players in each state that they live in or that they play a game in. They're paying taxes related to that state.
Exactly.
Well, over in Europe, you imagine the tax boondoggle that it would be if you're a soccer player, because they pay different taxes in each country that they live in.
Yeah.
So if you play for Real Madrid or something, you may play matches in 7 countries. Holy moly, that's bananas.
Yeah, you talk about needing a tax attorney for that kind of stuff to sort that stuff out.
Yeah, well, and then you got Ronaldo, 21 mil in the hole, and he just cuts him a check. CTC, baby. I guess that's cheaper than, hey, let him come after me, whatever.
Yeah.
So for some reason, my nose is plugging up like crazy. We are just at about the 1 hour mark. I think this has been a very big success on our part.
Yeah.
3rd time's a charm. We got the technical difficulties. Just don't touch anything now.
Well, I try not to. Yeah.
Thank you. There you go. Got all this stuff figured out. So yeah, I think it'd be fun to do maybe even these late night ones where we come down and just chat about the day's topics, because it's things are just churning and burning, and people kind of like to hear about things as they happen. So we'll see how we can expand on that. But and I also thought of an idea for the name of our other show,
All right.
the Forefathers podcast, because we can
Four?
like forefathers, like we talk about the Constitution and all
Yeah.
that, but then the show's Forefathers. Toss it around.
So
Anyone
are we
watch
spelling
this?
four with F-O-R or F-O-R-E?
Yeah, yeah. No,
Because if you're going
this is
forefathers, you got to throw an E in there. So how do you want to spell that?
I was thinking four F-O-R.
Okay.
Four, if we go with the E, then we also bring the golfers in there.
Yeah,
we don't
right.
want to confuse anyone with the fact that we may actually have something to say about golfers. Other than they make a lot of money or they're stiffing their caddies on their $1.3 million purse that they won here a few weeks ago.
Yeah, there you go.
So, anyway, well, thank you very much for joining us, everyone. You got anything else for us, Wes?
I got nothing.
Okay, this has been Kinetic Chaos podcast number 76. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you probably on Monday.
Yep, sounds good.
Around this time slot. So thanks very much, everyone. We go.
See ya.